All right. So welcome back, everyone. Okay, your name is Jimmy. Welcome on board, Jimmy. I am your instructor, Adidij. So today we are going to talk about CSS. Yesterday we talked about HTML based on the project we are going to build. Now today we are going to talk about CSS based on the project we are going to build also. So we'll talk about colors, we'll talk about background, we'll talk about every other thing concerning CSS and every other thing we are going to use in building this project over here. So let's ride on. If you are new to this channel, please do well to subscribe to the channel. That will really help us. So this bootcamp is a free bootcamp. So by you subscribing would really help us. Thank you very much. So let's continue. All right. Now, what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and basically, it is used to style our website to be to any of your preference, anyhow you want it. CSS is basically used to style our website. Now, we basically have three types of CSS. The first type of CSS is the inline CSS, and the inline css is written in the same line with our tag inside the opening tag. Now for me to write an inline css, I'll come inside the opening tag here and say style. Now this style here, you can give it any style of your choice. You can give it color, background, you can even change the size. So over here I'm just going to come here and say I want my color, then what, I'm going to use this color over here. Now if you come here, you are going to notice that the way it is being written is different from how we write our normal properties over here. Now to write a style, we are going to need some certain stuff in end to write a style. To write a style, you are going to write the name of the property colon the value of the property, then we are going to end it with semicolon. So this is how style are being written in CSS. So for instance, I can change this to blue, and that's going to change the color of my h1 to blue. I can change it to orange, and basically that's going to change the color of my h1 to orange. So this is for an inline css. Now we have what we call the internal css. The internal css is written in between pair of the style tag. So basically the internal css is written in between this style tag. You can write it anywhere in the body of your document, but it is preferable and advisable to write it inside the head of your document, so that basic is just going to make your website load faster, and it will not make it look very slow. Now what if I want to style this h2? Remember, for this inline css, we are referring to the html itself. That is why this styling is working. But what if I want to style this h2 over here and I cannot style it? How am I going to refer to it? I can refer to it by just calling the name. I'm just going to come here and I'm going to say the name of my tag is h2, then after that followed by curly bracket, then open it. Now we would have an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket. Now in between this curly bracket, I can give any of my style. Now I can say I want us to be color of yellow followed by a semicolon. But what if I have more than 5 h1? and I want to style only one of these h2. I don't want it to be everything. Now for me to do that, we are going to use what we call classes or id. Now what are classes and what are id? Classes stands as name for an element. Now one element can have multiple classes. This h2 can have a class of let's say bro. It can also have a class of da, like brother. Okay, so it can also have a class of power bank. Okay, yeah, so let's just say the name is power bank and the name is da, the name is bro. All right, so let's say this other bro also can have another class. For instance, let's say cis and also tar, like tariff. Okay, something like that. Now if I want to style them, instead of me just calling all this h2 over here, I can specifically call one of the names that is being given to them. Now for me to style the class, I'm just going to say dot, then the name of the class. So this is what I'm going to use to style it. Dot means that what it is a class, then the name of the class. So over here I can just say I want it to be orange red. So if you come here, we have orange red color over here. So if I also want to style this person bearing cis or tar, we can choose one of the names if we want. I can say I want to style anybody bearing the um name of cis, and I want the color to be green, and specifically that is going to make this a green color. Alright, so you might wonder why we are giving it different classes. Let's say for instance I come here to this my h2 here and I also give it a class of tar or cis like styled. We are going to notice that it is also having that green color. But let's say we want to specifically only target the person that has the class of cis and the person that has the class of tar. I'm just going to come here and say cis dot tar. Now what does this mean? It's trying to tell us that the person has the class of cis and the person has the class of tar, then can change the color or even give it a background color. So for me to give it a background color, remember anything that has two syllable, like for instance something like this, cannot be styled like this in our css. Instead, you are going to represent the space with a dash. This is going to tell us that this is not just one word, it is two different words. So if you want to style it like font family size or fly to the top, something like that, so you can just say something like fly dash to dash d dash top. So this is how css, there's nothing like fly to the top actually, but this is how css work with their own naming convention. So whenever you see background color, just make sure you use dash to separate wherever space is required. Alright, so if you come here, we are going to see the only one that has the background of yellow is this header over here. So if you don't understand any part of this um css or this topic, you can just ask in the live session, and during the break I would make sure we answer it. And also if you cannot ask in the comment section, you can ask in the telegram channel. So if you have not joined the telegram channel, just search for the Telegram Bootcamp community on Telegram, and you'd be gained access to join. All right, let's continue. We also have what we call ID. What does ID mean? ID stands as a unique identifier. So this stands as a unique identifier. That means what is like a unique name stands like a surname. Like for instance, somebody cannot have up to like 7 surname at once. No. So this ID stands as the person's surname. So for me to start this ID, Remember, in a class we can give it different names and we can choose any of the name to start, but for this id we are only opportuned to give it one name. Now for me to style this id, I'm just going to say hash, then the name of the id. Now over here I can just say I want that id to have a color of blue. If we come here, we are going to say that this h1 or this h2 that has the id of unique identifier is having the color of blue. Now you can give it any id of your choice. You can give it the id of your own name. Let's say the person is Sule, like Sule Sulaiman, or some people used to abuse us as Sule. That's a good name though. So if the person has the id of Sule and I want to style the Sule, let's say Sule does not have an air, is Babe Fadon. Alright. So I'm just going to come here and I'm going to say I want the color. Only the Yoruba will understand what we call Fadon. Okay. I want the color to be what kind of color? Let's just say brown. Then if you come here, you see that Sule Sulaimon is what is brown. So basically, these are what we call identifier, or let's just call it selectors in CSS. Now, the last type of selector we are going to talk about for now is the child selector, or we call it the parent descendant selector. Now, for me to do this child selector, I am going to need to create like maybe a general div. We have what we call semantic tags, and we talked about the semantic tag in yesterday's HTML class. So we talked about the schematic tag. So for you to use the descendant or child selector, we are going to need to wrap it in a schematic tag. For instance, a div. Now let's say that these people is from the family of Jigon, like just the family of Jigon. Then inside this family of Jigon, we have so many people. Like this first person, his name is Ayo. This second person, his name is John. This third person, his name is Celine, and so on and so forth. So we can have these three people. Now whenever we want to style it, in order for ceiling not to mix with the same ceiling that is not in our family, in order for us not to mix this, let's pretend that we call this person ceiling or seal, and we also called this person seal. Now in order for this seal not to affect this seal, because currently over here, if I come here to style the ceiling dot seal and I give it a color of let's use a color of purple this time around, we are going to see that both this ceiling and this ceiling are having the same color. But what if I only want the ceiling from the family of Jigon? How am I going to do that? I'm going to use the parent selector. Instead of me just calling the name of the ceiling, I'm going to start with the name of the parent, Jigon, then what? Space, the name of that child. Now if I come here, we are going to see that what? Ceiling is the only one that is styled over here, despite the fact that these two are having the same classes. So the parent selector is just used to distinguish which selector or which element specific do you want to style. If I want to style all the paragraph under the Jigon family, I'm just going to say under the Jigon family we have P. I want all of them to be a color of purple. So if you come here, you see that under the Jigon family, all of them are color of purple. Now the next type of selector we are going to talk about is the um we are going to talk about the pseudo element selector and the pseudo class selector. So basically we just talk about the pseudo class selector. Like for instance, if you put your mouse on this, you want to do something, If you put your mouse on this, you want to do something. If you put your mouse on this image, you want to do something. So those ones are the pseudo class selector. Now the first type of pseudo class we are going to talk about is the over pseudo class. What does the over do? The over is going to tell us that whenever our mouse is over an element, for instance, let's say this h1 over here, I want to change the color from red to green. Whenever I put my mouse over it, I'm just going to come here and see h1 colon over, then inside there I'm just going to come here and say color, then what, let's change it to blue. Now if I come here and I put my mouse over this my h1, if I do we have an h1 here? Yeah, we have an h1. Okay, come in. Oh, this is the h1 here, sorry, my bad. So if I put my mouse over this h1, it is supposed to change the color to blue. So let's try it out. Put my mouse over it, and we are going to see that what, it is changing that color to what, blue, whenever I put my mouse over it. Now the same thing is applicable to this person bearing the C star. I can see that this C star, whenever I over on it, I want to change the background color from yellow to maybe pink, or any other thing that we want. Now if I come here and I put my mouse over here, we are going to see that that yellow changes to what, pink. So that is basically what is happening here. We are telling it that when we put our mouse over it, we want it to maybe increase in size or decrease in size. The same thing are applicable to some of them here. We want them to increase in whatsoever, and we want to change the color or any other thing that we want. So basically we use the over. The same way we have the over, we have the active. What does the active do? The active means whenever you click down on an element. So if I come here and say whenever this element is active, I want to change the background color from this yellow to maybe orange over here. Now if I come here and I click down on it, you see that what, it is changing to orange. So if you click and hold on that element, that is when this active is going to work. So basically I'm going to be teaching us on this curriculum over here. I'm going to be teaching us based on this website over here. Now the last type of css is the external css. Majorly or lately we have been doing everything inside our html, and that can easily get out of hand and unmaintainable. So what are we going to do? Instead of creating it inside there, we are going to need a style sheet. If I paste this same thing inside there, we are going to see that it is the same thing that happened. So we can easily just also style it this same way over here. Now on a normal editor, on a real life editor, apart from Comibyte that help you to do everything, we are going to need to link our element. We need to link the css. Let's say for instance the name of the css is style. We are going to use the link relationship is equals to style sheet, then the name href is going to be style dot what, css. So whenever we are doing that, this is how we are going to run it. But for now, since Comibyte have done this for us, everything is going to work as it is meant to. So we see all this. Now I'm going to take a break and I'm going to entertain questions in the comment section from different people, and we are going to answer them. So let's go on a break. All right, so welcome back. I believe my team have been answering some of the questions you are asking, and continue dropping questions. We are going to answer all the questions related to that. Now let's move on. We have talked about selectors and every other thing over here. So let's talk about order styling. Now there's what we call padding in our CSS, and there's what we call margin in our CSS. If you have done graphic designing before, you are going to understand what we call by padding and what we call by margin. So padding just refers to the outer space, the inner space within an element. Padding refers to the inner space within an element, while margin refers to the outer space within an element. To write a comment in CSS, you are going to use the slash asterisk, then wherever you want to end it, you use what? Asterisk slash. So this is how to write a comment in our CSS. So basically, we are just going to come here and we are just going to say padding stands as the word inner space within an element, while margin, so margin stands as the outer space around an element. Alright, now if you want to use padding for an element, let's say this element that has the background color of yellow, I'm just going to come here and say padding, then I can use any of my values. So I can say I want the padding to be 100 pixels. Now calculation in CSS have different values or parameters. Now the first parameter is the pixels, and the pixel is just the smallest parameter of calculation in our CSS. We have other parameters like centimeter, centi, I don't know how it spells, but we also have what we call VH, that stands for viewport height, viewport height. We have what we call the VW, that stands for the viewport width. We have percentage, we have millimeters, we have rem, we have am, and much more. But the one we are going to be using the most is the pixel, the vh, and the percentage. So that's what we are going to be using. So you have to choose any of them. If I come here and say I want the inner space to be 100 centimeter, you are going to see how long it is. So centimeter is a very huge stuff. So instead of that, we use pixel, which is the smallest. Now if you come here, we are going to see that inner space within this element increased. That means within this background color, we have what? Some inner space. So that is basically what the padding is all about. We have different parts for the padding. If you want the padding for just the top, we are just going to say padding top, and if you come here, we are going to see that the space from the top. Now we also have the padding bottom, and it's just for the padding from the bottom. We also have the padding left, that is space from the left, and also what? The padding right, that is what? Space from the right. Now if you want everything to be the same thing, that is where you are just going to say padding 100 pixels, or any pixel you want. If I want padding to be 10 pixel, you just see a little bit of padding. If I want padding to be 40 pixel, we are going to see a little bit of padding. So that is padding in CSS. Now what is margin? Margin is just like the outer space outside an element. So for me to use margin, I'm just going to say what? Margin over here. Now you can set any margin, you can set any value for your margin, but over here I can just say space around my element can be something like 100 pixels. Now if you come here, we are going to see that instead of spaces within that color, it is spaced around that color. So that is what the margin does. So if you have any question, please do well to ask on the comment section. So it's better to open new tags. Alright, so opening new tags depends on you. To depend on what you want to use that tag is. So opening new tag in terms of what? Is it the CSS or the HTML? So if you want to open a new tag for the CSS, you just use style, but it is much more advisable to use the external CSS so that your CSS is or your HTML will not get too long and unmaintainable. So that's just basically why we are using the external CSS. Alright, so let's continue. Now, margin is like what? Outer space. We will come here, we see that when we give it padding, for instance, it's just what? Space within our element. But when we give it margin, it is what? Space outside our element in the white space. Now, if I come here and say I want space from the top, you see it's giving us space from the top. If I say I want margin from the bottom, you see that it's giving us what? Margin from the bottom. I can say I want margin from the left and it's giving us margin from the left, and also margin from the right, and it is going to give us margin from the right. Now if our element has a width, for instance, whenever we set margin left and margin right to be auto, it is going to bring our element to the center. Now let's talk about width and height. Width and height is basically used to control how long and how tall our element is. For instance, if I have a div here with a class of, let's just say, empty over here, let's just say empty. Now if I want to style this empty in my CSS, it does not have any content inside, so I can increase the width. I'm just going to say dot empty. I want to give it something like a width of 300 pixel semicolon, and maybe an height of what? 300 pixel semicolon. And also I can say I want to give it a background color of maybe red or green. Now if we come back here to our elements, we are going to see this empty div over here with just the background color of red. So whenever you are reducing the width and height of your element, it is basically going to reduce how long and how big or how huge your element is. So I can come here and say I want the height to be 200 pixel. So if we come here, we have something like a rectangular stuff. I can say I want it to be 100 pixel. We have something like this. Now for something that has a width, if we give it a margin left of auto, and also a margin right of auto, it is going to bring our content to the center of the page. So whenever you want to do something like that, you can use what? The margin left and the margin right. Now let's move on to display. And under display, I'm going to teach you about flex, and I'm going to teach you about block. Alright, now there are elements that are non-block level elements, and example of such elements are the span and other elements. Now if I come here and I create a span that says that this is a span, and I give it maybe a class of maybe span man, and also and also and also over here, if we come here and give this a class of maybe span bro, and also have the same word inside, if I come here to my CSS and style my span man, and I give it a background color of green, and I also come here to style my span bro, and I give it a background color of the same color. Now if we come here to our element, we are going to see that this element over here, it is stopping here wherever the content stop, but this element over here, it continues even though the content inside is small. So we have what we call the block level element and the non-block level element. So the block level elements are elements that contains the entire width even though the content in it is not up to that entire width. So an example is this h1 over here. If you come here, we are going to see this h1 is containing the entire width even though the content inside is not containing that entire width. But this is a non-block level element. It only stops wherever the content ends. So that is why this span man is only stopping where this content ends. Now if I want to change this span man to also be like a block level element, just like my span bro, I'm just going to come here and use what we call display, and I'm going to set it to block. Now if you come here, we are also going to see that now this one is now also taking the entire width because of the display of block. So the block level element basically takes the entire weight of our element even though the content is not up to that weight. So if you have any question, please do well to ask over here and we are going to answer you guys. All right, now let's move on to the display of flex. The display of flex always possible by using a parent element. Now let's say for instance we have a div here, and my div have a class of, let's say, father man over here, and my father man has different paragraph. For instance, over here we can just say man 1 and what man 2 and man 3 and man 4, and let's just say man 5. Now all these paragraphs are block level elements. So if I want to style it, I can just say what I want to style the father man, just like the same class I gave it here. That is what I want to style here. Over here I can just say I want all the paragraph inside the father man, I want it to have a background color of maybe gray or any other color that we want. Now if you come here, all this man here, they are having background color of gray, and maybe we can say we want to set the margin to 10 pixel. So we have something like this. Now everything here is just here, nothing is here, everything here is just on their own. Now if I want to bring everything to be on the same line, all I'm just going to say is that I want to take this class of father man over here, and I want to use what we call display of flex. All right, what does display of flex do? Display of flex is going to bring everything to be on one line over here, and the display of flex brings 1 2 3 4 5 to be what on the same line. Now let me give this thing some inner space. I can just say padding of 10 pixel. So if you come here, we see that what everything inside there is on the same line, just like our a tag over here is also on the same line. Now let's continue. So if we come here, we have some pretty much stuff under our display of flex. The first one we are going to talk about is the justify content, and justify content works for the horizontal aspect of our website. So I can say justify the content in the horizontal aspect to what, to the center. Now if you come here, all our content here are at the center of our page. Now I can come here and say I want to justify the content to the end of our page. So over here we are going to see that our elements are being justified to the end of our page. Now the last one is what, justify content or start. and that's just going to bring the content to the beginning of our page. Now we have other one, we have the justify content of space between, and that's going to stretch out our element and give them spaces in between each other. If I stretch this over here, we are going to see that it is giving us what, different spaces in between each other. So basically the justify content of space between give them space in between each other. We also have the justify content of space evenly. Space evenly will give them equal space from the right, from the beginning to the end, and also maintain them to be at the center. If you come here, we are going to see that they have spaces in between each other and they are at the center. The last one is what we call the space around, and that's just going to give them little space at the beginning and much spaces in the center. Now the next one we'll talk about is what we call the align items. So the align items basically brings our content to the center in the vertical aspect. Now let's say for instance I have a paragraph here. Let's just say the paragraph has the class of let's just say third man over here. So I want to style this third man over here. I'm just going to say that dot third man, then I want to increase the height to maybe 100 pixel. All right, so we have something like this. That's the third man. Now if I want to align the rest of the contents, you are going to realize that these contents are having the height even though they are not the one bearing the third man over here. So what are we going to do? We are going to use the align items. I'll say I want to align them to be at the center of my page. So if you come here, basically it is supposed to just bring everything to the center of our page. So let's see, dot father man, dot third man. Alright, so let's just say something like that, or don't let us use this. Instead, let's increase the height of our element. Let's say our element has the background color of gray over here. Alright, I think it's going to work. Sorry, my bad. I made a mistake here. Now, if you come here, we are going to see that all these elements over here are now at the center over here. They are at the center vertically. So basically, the align items brings our content to the center in the vertical aspect. Alright. Now, there are more to this. For instance, if I was to increase the width of each of my paragraph to be something like, let's say, 200 pixels, our element will start to shrink the more I reduce the screen. Now, what are we going to do? If we don't want our element to shrink, we are going to use what we call the flex dash wrap, and we are going to set it to wrap. What does the flex wrap mean? Flex wrap is going to tell us that if this space is not enough for it anymore, I want you to what? Break it. Now this one is going to create something like a responsive stuff for us, which will make it look nice on a mobile phone. For instance, if I reduce this to be on a mobile phone, we are going to see that what it is responsive. So basically we can use that for what we call responsiveness of a website. Now there's other one called the flex direction. So I'm going to comment this flex wrap. We are not using it. And there's what we call flex direction. And the flex direction is just trying to tell us that the direction of our flex. So I'm just going to come here and say what I want it to be column. If I say flex direction should be column, it's going to bring our content to be column like this. We also have what we call the column reverse, and the column reverse is just going to reverse the way of the column. you see that now 5 is at the top and 1 is at the bottom. So basically that is all we need to know about flex. Now let's check other curriculum we have not talked about. Okay, now let's move on to shadow. What is a shadow? A shadow is just like a backdrop under an element. All right, to create a shadow is quite simple. All we just need to do is use what we call the box shadow. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to choose an element over here, for instance an input. There's an element with the class of input. To create the shadow, we are just going to say box shadow. Now box shadow takes at least 4 values. It takes the value of the right, it takes the value of the top, or sorry, bottom, is take the value of the blurity and the color that we want. So those are the 4 values that a box shadow takes. So for now, let's just use our text area instead of our. So I want a little bit from the height. I can just say something like 2 pixel. I can say in the bottom 2 pixel. I can say 6 pixel blurity, and the color should be black. Now if we come here, we have something like this. We are going to see some kind of shadow in our. If you don't want the black, we have what, gray. So we can have something like this. If you want this, we can also want something like a light gray. We have something like this. Now under color, if you don't want all these colors over here, if you don't want all this color under here, we are going to need to look for something like a color picker. There's what we call hexadecimal or RGBA. So what are we going to do? I'm just going to come here and inside your Google just search for what we call color picker. Now you can choose the color, any color of your choice. You can choose any color of your choice, and over here they are going to give you the hexadecimal, RGB, and all this other style of it. I'm going to show you how to use each of them. I'm going to show you how to use X, RGB, and what this over here. You can also compare the lightness if you want. Can make it light anyhow you want. All right, so let's just choose any of this color over here. So I'm just going to say I want this color over here, or let's make this color over here. Now if I want to use this X, I'm just going to need to what, copy this X over here, then come back to my website. Instead of me using this my gray color over here, I can just use my what, hex, and if we come here, we are going to see that that color that we chose here is also working the same way as we wanted it. Now if you don't want to use this hex, we can use the RGB. I'm just going to need to copy this RGB, then inside there, instead of me saying the hash, I'll start with what we call the RGB, then 2 brackets. In between that bracket, okay, they've created the RGB for me. I'm just going to what, paste it. So if you come here, we are going to see that same color is also working the same way. We can also use the CMYK if you want. So to use the CMYK, can just use what we call CMYK, and I don't think it's really supported by the CSS. So basically the other ones that are working is what, this HSL. So I'm just going to paste it over here, and if you come here, we are also going to see something like this. So basically you can choose any of the color of your choice, and if you have gotten the color you want, you can just copy, or you can just say maybe color picker with transparency. Also, if you want a color picker that is also going to give you transparency, you can choose any of the websites of your choice. So this one is just how transparent you want it to be. You can choose any of the color of your choice and how transparent you want it to be. If you come here, we are going to see the RGBA color. They are going to be giving you in RGBA color. They are going to be giving you in just the RGB. And also over here, you can change from hexadecimal to just your RGBA color. Alright, so let's continue. That's just by the way, in case if you don't know the name of these colors, we can use pickers to pick our color. Now you might wonder how we did something like this over here. So for us to do something like this, we used what we call span in our HTML. Now let's say for instance, I have an h1 with a class of, let's say, buy now, and over here I want to write these contents that are inside there, but you realize all of them are not black. Instead, some of them are what are in the blue color, like something like a blue color. So for me to do that, I'm going to need to wrap that my text in the span. So I'll start the span from here. Let me increase it so you see where I'm starting it from. I'm starting the span from here, and I'm ending it wherever I want to change that color to. So over here, I'm just going to say that I want to target anything under the buy now dot buy now, and I want to check the span that is inside. So what do we want to do? I want to change the color. So I'm just going to choose a color over here. You can use RGB if you want. So I can just choose any of this color, then over here just copy the RGBA, then paste it on inside there. Now if you come back here to your website, you are going to see that this more than just a weighing scale has a different color from this one over here. So that is basically how to change a color within an element. Now the next thing we talk about is changing a font family. If you come here, you are going to realize that our font family here is just something like a sharp stuff, but the font family here is something like a cooler way. So for me to change the font family, I'm just going to come here and say I want to change the font dash family, and I can change it to anything, but the one we are going to be using here is what we call the area. So we can change the font family to any font family of your choice. We have online font family. So if you come here, you see that this one's font is different from this one's font. So anything you want to change the font family, you can basically work on it like that. Now let's move on to what we call transform, because I'm going to be basically teaching on this curriculum. But before moving to transform, we are going to need to talk about border and outline. Now what's a border? A border is just a line around an element. If you come here, we will see a border like a black border when we start writing. So border is just basically the line around an element. So for us to use the border over here, we are just going to come here and choose the name of the element. Let's say we want to target this text area also. Let me comment this. I'm just going to comment and what comment. Now if you don't understand any part, do well to ask your questions on the comment section, and my team will also answer all our questions. Okay, so let's continue. So inside this part over here, I can use the border. To use the border, I'm just going to say what border. Now border takes in three values. It takes in the width of your border, it takes in the style of your border, and it takes in the color of your border. Now if I come here, I want the width to be maybe 10 pixel. I want the style. For now, we are going to be using what we call solid, and I want the color to be this RGB blah blah. If you come here inside this, we are going to see this thick border over here. So basically that is what a border is all about. is just the line around an element. You can play around with the width, you can play around with the style, you can play around with the color anytime you want. But just know it takes in three values: the width, the style, and the color. So for this bootcamp purpose, we are only going to be talking about the solid. All right, so let's move on. That is why when you see this, we have what we call the border. All right, the next thing we are going to talk about is the transform. So before we move on to talking about the transform, we are going to have a short break, and any question you have, you can ask it on the comment section or on the Telegram group. So let's go for a short break. All right, so welcome back. So no questions, and we are going to move on. So I said we are going to talk about this. This is what we call transform, and we are also going to talk about animation very soon. Now let's say for instance I want this my text over here or this my image over here to also scale the same way it is scaling when I over on it over here. What am I going to do? I'm going to choose that image. Let's pretend the image does not have a class, which our image will do because we are going to have lots of images on the platform. So I'm just going to choose this image and I'm going to say whenever I over on it. Now there's what we call transform. And what does the transform do? Transform comes with different properties. But for now, we are going to talk about the transform translate and the transform scale. So let's start with the scale. What does the scale do? It increase our elements by any percentage we want. The scale naturally is 1, which is just the default scale. But we can decide to increase it by 2. Now, if I put my mouse on this element, we are going to see that it is increasing, but that is not how this over here is increasing. This one is increasing slightly and smoothly. So what are we going to do? We are going to choose this image and we are going to give it what we call transition. So transition basically is just going to slow down your operation for some certain seconds. Now if I come here, we are going to see that what it is now smooth. It is not faster like we expected. So we can use 1.1.3, we can use 1.1, 1.2, and that's just going to increase it. We can use just 1.1 and that's just going to increase it a little bit, just like we did here. It's just increasing it a little bit. So that's what we are doing here. So the transform scale basically increases our element and also decrease. If you want to decrease your element, you are going to go below 0.04. Then if you come here and I over on this, we are going to see that what our element is going what below. All right, you can see you want it to just go 0.1. Then if I come here and I over on this element, we also see what 0.1. You can see 0.8. Then if I over on this element, we'll just see what we call 0.8. So basically the transform scale is just used to increase and decrease the um the size of our element, all right, by times 2 of its size, actual size, or times any amount of its actual size. Now let's move on to translate. What does translate do? Translate is basically used to move our element. Now we have two type of translates. We have the translate x to move our element in the x-axis. So we have the translate x to move our elements in the x-axis, and we have the translate y. So let's take this away from the image, or let's use it here in the image itself, not the over. Now if you come here, we are going to realize that our image has moved 200 pixels away from the starting point. We can move it anywhere we want. We can see I just want to move it 100 pixels. Then if you come here, it is moving 100 pixels away from it. Now we also have what we call the translate y. That's just going to move in the y-axis, which is the vertical axis. So if you want to use both y and x together, I'm just going to say translate. The first value is for the x-axis and the second value is for the y-axis. So in the x-axis maybe 200 pixels, and in the y-axis maybe 200 pixels. Now if you come here, we are seeing that we have moved our element away from the actual size and we are moving it wherever we want it to be. So that's basically transition or transform under our CSS. We have other, but I'm not going to go in depth. I'm teaching it based on this our curriculum over here. So I'm just teaching us what we are going to need to complete this project over here. Now the last thing we are going to talk about is this over here. Now this thing we did over here in our way now is what we call the animation. And to create animation is quite simple. All you just need to do is add, then what, keyframes. keyframes. So add keyframes. Now let's say I want to create an animation for a new element. Let's just say I want to create animation for buy now. All right, I want the buy now to increase in size and decrease in size. So what am I going to do? I'm going to come here to this buy now itself. Let's just change everything to buy now, and I'm going to use what we call animation. Now our animation can take in different properties, but before we move on, our animation is going to need a name. Our animation is going to need a duration. That means how many seconds or how many minutes do you want to run this animation. And also our animation is also going to have what we call iteration count. That means how many times do you want to run this animation. And the last one is that our animation is going to have the animation delay. That means before your animation starts, how long do you want it to delay. Now I can see my animation should just be something like move up. Then over here I want it to run for I want it to run every 4 seconds. Then iteration count, I want it to run 2 times, and delay, we don't want to delay it, so I'm just going to take that away. Now for this animation to work, we are going to use what we call the keyframes over here. So I'm just going to say at keyframes, then the name of the animation. The name I give that animation is move up. So I'll say at keyframes move up. So what do we want to do whenever this keyframes? Whenever we are using keyframe, we have from 0% to 100%. And what does that do? The 0%, it is going to be the starting point of our time, and the 100% is the last point of our time. So within that our time, for instance 4 seconds this time around, within that 4 seconds, what do you want to do? Maybe whenever we get to 50% within that 4 seconds, we want to do something. And of course 50% of 4 seconds is what? 2 seconds, because 4 divided by half, that's what? 2 seconds. So basically we can see we want to do something whenever we get to 50%. And what do we want to do? We just want to transform scale by 1.2 or whatever we want to do. Now if I come here to our element, we are going to see that this thing is running every 4 seconds, and when it gets to 2 times, it is going to stop. So basically the reason why it's stopping at that twice is because of this iteration count. But if you come here, we are going to see this thing keeps running every time and every time. So what are we going to do? We just need to set this to what we call infinite. Now if we come back here to our website, we are going to have this infinite. Now we don't want it to be transformed. There's what we call opacity on our CSS. Opacity is going to make it dim and is going to make it light. All right, so opacity, the default is 1, but you can go below 1, 0 point, let's say 2. Now if I come here, we are going to see that this element is becoming dim, and what? It is increasing in size. You can decrease the width if you want, or the time. So it's going to be taking that specific time. So that is how this is being done. So it is just using the animation. Now this is going to be the end of today's bootcamp lecture, and in the next class we are going to build this full website from scratch using all what we have learned. We talked about animation, we've talked about background width, we have talked about icons, we have talked about inputs, we have talked about embedding a video into your website, we have talked about linking to different sections of your website, we talked about border, we talked about shadow, we talked about over, we talked about different things over here, and all we need to know to build this website from scratch. So I'm going to see you in the next class, and in the next class we are going to use all we have learned here today, and we are going to use it to build our website. So I'm going to see you in the next class. I am Adedeji. So if you have any question, just drop it on the comment section before this live stream is going to end. But if you could not drop it, just drop it on our Telegram group, Comibyte Bootcamp community. So I'm going to see you in the next class.